afterwards via email to everyone who registered. If you have any questions as Louise is presenting, then please put them in the chat. We will have time at the end to chat together or to answer any questions that you have. And we're also going to do a few polls during the session. So those will sort of pop up on your screen and you'll get the chance to answer. And those are anonymous as well. So feel free to kind of share when we do that. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Robin and I'm co-founder of Pravi. Pravi is a new platform that helps small and medium-sized charities with data insights and AI tools to help them grow online and find new donors. So I'm usually here talking about AI and technology, but I'm really pleased today to have Louise here to talk about the human side of our work, which is so important and I think a really great topic as well for January as we get started in the year. So I'm going to hand over to Louise now. But as I say, please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves, to say hi, and to ask any questions that you may have. Thanks, Louise.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Robin. Thank you so much for having me here today. And thank you to everybody who's able to join the session. When Robin shared the sort of information about where people are joining from, I was absolutely staggered to see so many people from all across the globe. It's quite incredible, actually. So if you want to drop in the chat where you're joining from, that would be really interesting. So yeah, I'm Louise Dawtry, and today's session is going to be how to create a healthy culture in your charity teams. So just a little introduction to who I am and what I do. I am the founder of What's the Charity, which is the community and podcast for all nonprofit people. So whether you work for a charity or you volunteer with a nonprofit organisation, or maybe you're just somebody that likes to support a good cause, this is the place for you. It's a very safe, supportive, inclusive community that is, it started on LinkedIn and then it kind of has developed into a very growing and engaged community on Instagram. So I'll have a link to that at the end if you're interested in joining. But yeah, it's a completely free community. And then the podcast as well, by the same name, and that is a platform. I wanted to create a platform for people like myself and you guys as well to share stories about working in the nonprofit sector, whether the highs and the lows of our roles, and just really to kind of open up that discussion in a really positive way to talk and celebrate about why we love what we do, but also to acknowledge and recognize that there are challenges as well. So that podcast is we started that in September, and I've had a range of frontline workers in charities, as well as volunteers and people in leadership roles within charities. So yeah, check that out if you haven't already. Hopefully you will find that interesting and beneficial. But my day job is a people and culture lead at Mind in Leeds in Yorkshire. So I lead the team there, and very generalist kind of role with HR and people and culture, but a big part of that is well-being. Obviously, being a mental health charity, it's something that we take very, very seriously, and we want to create a culture where all of our people, including our volunteers, can thrive at work. I'm also a volunteer for the King's Trust and SmartWorks as well. So I'm very passionate about volunteering, and those two particular causes are very, very close to my heart. So I'm thrilled to be able to do that as well. And I'm also on the board of trustees for another charity called Staying Put, which is a charity to support with victims of domestic abuse. So that's a little bit about me. And let's talk about now what we're going to cover today in today's session. So we're going to look at the wellbeing challenges that we are finding in the sector, and try to unpick those a little bit. Then we're going to move on to why the culture that we have in our organizations and why that's so important, particularly around setting boundaries and what leadership can do to implement those initiatives. I'm also going to share some community insights from What's the Charity. So this project for me has been absolutely brilliant. I've connected with so many wonderful people, including Robin, through doing this. And also Hayley, I recognize Hayley's name. She's here from Instagram. So lots of people that I chat to in the DMs or that I've had calls with and things, and of course people on the podcast. It's been really, really interesting to hear from so many people about the challenges they're facing, and what, it's helping me try to look at what we can do to make things better. So we'll look at those as well. And also the importance of investing in our people and also the infrastructure that supports what we do and why that's so important too. And then I've got some tips as well on how we can try and foster a sense of belonging for our people. So hopefully that sounds like what you all signed up to. So let's look at the sector challenges that we are facing. Now, from the data, we know that job satisfaction in our roles and in the sector is very high. It's 73% of us feel that we have very high job satisfaction, which is fantastic, because obviously we know that we're making a difference and our roles are very, they're making that impact on people's lives. But what we're also experiencing is a whopping 88% of my What's Charity community members have said that they have experienced burnout, which is just it's such a massive number, and I'm just not okay with that. I just think it's so huge, and that's obviously what's really spurred me on to set up What's the Charity, because I want to see that number reduce. So the other thing that was worrying, and it's a massive gap, is that actually 12% of us believe that our employers are equipped to deal with that burnout issue. So there's a huge gap there with leaders of charity organizations, their people are feeling that they're not able to deal with the burnout issue despite it being so prevalent. So that's the sort of situation that we're dealing with, and I'm sure none of you are surprised to see those numbers at all. But what I would like to do, if Robin's okay to just pop the poll up, is I just want to see how well you feel that your organisation currently, how well equipped they are currently to handle burnout and any wellbeing challenges.
You should all see a poll, should pop up on your screen, and you can choose between the 5 options. And as I said, this is I set this up to be anonymous, so don't worry about people knowing how you answer or anything like that.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I can see a few answers coming in. I'm just looking at where you're all based. London, Sheffield, Leeds, Devon. Oh, that's you. That's you.
No, I think we might have a bit of a funny glitch, actually. I think a few people have come through with my name on their Zoom. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. Something funny happening in the joining. So sorry about that if that's happened to you. Quite weird for me to see my own name so many times. Can I post the poll? Let me see. Sorry, Tanya's just asking if I can post the poll again. Sure if I can. I think I have to end the poll in order to post it again, Tanya. So sorry about that. I don't think I can. Let me sorry. Let me end it for now. So I think we've got, maybe if I click here, can you see the results now?
No.
Oh, sorry. So I'm just getting to grips with the polls. What I can tell you is that the majority have chosen quite well equipped.
Which is, that's really positive to see that. which is obviously quite a difference to the statistics. But so yeah, that's all. We're in a positive place. This is good. This is really good. Thank you, Robin.
No worries.
Um, so I'll just close that poll. Yeah, so if we look at the sort of reasons behind those stats, the drivers of wellbeing challenges again won't be surprising to most of you, I'm sure, but it's obviously the workloads. We're under-resourced a lot of the time, and our workloads can often be huge. I know, in past roles, I've been doing three roles, have three different hats on, and just kind of, being employed for only one of them. But yeah, so the high workloads, high demands is a big challenge, and also the invisible workload as well. So what I mean by that is the emotional labour that often comes with charity work. Obviously, we care very, very deeply. We're very empathetic people, I think, as by nature, and we want to help others and we want to make a difference. And that can sometimes, that emotional labour can be quite hard. And then it also feeds into are sometimes what people have said to me is that they feel like they feel guilty. There's a guilt-driven overworking feeling where they just can't, they don't want to they don't want to let people down. They don't want to put those boundaries in place because they feel like they're letting people down. So a lot of the time, I think it's us ourselves that have this sort of, because we're so passionate, it can often spill into overworking. Um, and like I say, the boundaries or lack of boundaries can be a real problem too. Um, and also, what I'm hearing is management decisions and organizational structures and processes, procedures, all of the infrastructure within organizations can play into these wellbeing challenges. So again, I've got another poll. If people are able to do this, it would just again be interesting to see what you're experiencing, what you feel your biggest contributor is to wellbeing challenges for you or for your teams or colleagues.
So I'm going to launch the poll now. So it should
You.
pop up on your screen.
Yes, we've got workload, emotional labour, lack of boundaries, poor infrastructure, ineffective management, or other. Um, if whoever, if you select other, you can drop it in the chat if you want to, but you don't have to. Um,
Yeah, that'd be great if you have any more sort of detail
mm,
on like your answers as well. It's always great to have that extra sort of color as well.
mm,
So you can see in the chat here, Laura said lived experience brought into work.
yeah,
So
yeah,
awesome.
that's a really, really important point, I think, because that's something that I see where I work for mental health charity. It's, we employ a lot of people with lived experience of mental health challenges. And for me, in my role as people and culture, I need to support managers and support those individuals very carefully to make sure that we're not putting them into positions where their work's going to have a detrimental effect on them. Sometimes they're not quite far enough in their own recovery,
Mm.
perhaps, to actually take on the work because it can be quite triggering. So yeah, definitely lived experience it's a tricky balance, I think, sometimes to get.
And so Haley has said possibly all of them. And
Yeah.
Miles has said workload driven by lack of resources and people, which I'm sure is very relatable as well for other people on the call. So let me see if I can end the poll and share it this time. Otherwise, I'll just read out the responses. So clicking share results. I don't know if everyone can see this or not. Can you see your end, Louise?
Um, yeah, it hasn't really changed for me. It was as it was before. Tells me
That's weird.
60% for workload, 20%
Yeah.
emotional.
So these are the responses. So 60% of people have said workload, 20% emotional labor, 20% lack of boundaries, 40% ineffective management, and then we've got one other.
Yeah. Yes, that's interesting. It's yeah, workload and management. And I guess sometimes they are, or quite often they go hand in hand. So yeah, that's great to know. Thank you for that.
I just got one more comment as well in the chat from Laura, which again I think is very relatable, which is charity
Yeah.
funding landscape and cuts, which I'm sure
Mm.
again everyone on the call can relate to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big, I can't talk about well-being without acknowledging that, the funding, a lot of the well-being issues that we face are systemic. We can only do what we can do with what we've got. And yeah, that comes down to funding models, doesn't it? So yeah, that is a big part of this. Okay, so that was great thank you for sharing that. So I just want to talk about what I'm seeing. So with all that information, what I've been seeing with What's the Charity and the conversations I've been having is there feels like there's a real need for that community and that feeling of belonging in our sector with our peers. So really being able to show up authentically and feel recognized with others from the sector can really help, I think, having that sense of well-being, knowing that you're not on your own, you're not struggling on your own. There are other people out there that totally get what you're going through. And that can be a real big factor in helping our well-being, as well as sharing our learnings. We're all doing such fantastic work in our own organizations. And again, with the resources we've got, but how amazing to be able to share experience and, think our learnings, what's gone well, what hasn't worked well, and really collaborate as a sector rather than kind of working in silos and as, with kind of competition. I think being together and working together, we can do so much more. And inclusion and that support is what I'm hearing is very important to people like ourselves in the sector. So that's what I hope What's the Charity brings to people. As I say, I want to try and make the sector better. I want to try and inspire others to come and get involved either in paid work or volunteering, but also to try and tackle that well-being issue too. So let's look at culture and boundaries and why our leadership matters. So I interviewed a wonderful lady called Eloise Bell, who is the Director of People, Culture and Governance at Leeds Mind. So she's actually my boss. So that was I turned the tables and I interviewed her. So that was quite cool. And I think that was episode 3 of the podcast. So that's a picture of us there. But one thing that really struck me was the quote, "There's nothing that sets the tone worse than an SLT running around like headless chickens talking about how busy they are." So I think we may have I've certainly experienced this in previous organizations, but that almost bragging about how busy you are or how, oh, I'm so busy, I can't get to this and that. And let me tell you, that destroys the confidence and the culture for your people quicker than anything else. We need to be seeing healthy boundaries being role modeled. We need to foster an inclusive culture so everybody gets recognized. We can be open and honest and transparent in our conversations about about our workloads, about how we're feeling. If there's something going on, perhaps outside of our work, we should feel like we're able to discuss that with our managers, and also our colleagues and have their support too. Not necessarily because your manager should need to fix anything for you, but it's to open up those conversations to work together to improve your life at work. Um, so I think leadership play a massive role in setting the scene for culture, and really they do need to lead by example. Mm. Um, Something I talk about with in What's the Charity is we are non-profit, not non-stop. So what I it's kind of my mantra that just because we're non-profit, it doesn't mean we have to be flat out non-stop working. We do have to look after ourselves first to be able to deliver on what we're supposed to be doing at work. Um, so in order for organizations to do this, I think it's so important to have those people first practices and to look at the infrastructure within our organizations. So again, it's that belonging and recognition and working with your teams to include them in conversations, in decision making, include them as much as you can to get their feelings, especially the frontline workers, they're so close to the mission. It's really, really important that they are recognized and they have a place to feed back into, um, particularly with their, senior leadership team as well. And also the infrastructure is really the foundation. So if you think about building a house, you have to get those foundations in first before you can build the house. So to me, that infrastructure, that organizational design, how you're setting up your structures of your teams, your digital and technology infrastructure, it's all so, so important because if you're trying to do so much work and the systems you have in place are they're just not effective, they're not efficient. I think it's so, so critical to get that piece right because then that can have such a massive effect on people's well-being if they, if there's nothing worse than having a really clunky system or process and procedure. It just chips away at our kind of our sanity really in our work. So that is a big, big thing to consider. Um, so the next slide I've got is to talk about some quick wins. So, and this is such a huge topic, so it's difficult to kind of put it all into an hour session. But for me, these are three really key parts of how to build a healthy culture. So the first thing I would say is you're opening up your feedback channels and making sure that they are regular and, as I say, really open, and that you're having regular one-to-ones, you're having regular group discussions as a team, to get the most out of people. I would also, the key part of this though is the questions that you ask and how you hold those conversations. So first of all, ask the people. If you're not sure, ask people. Just ask the question, um, you know, what are they experiencing? How do they think that they could improve things? Something I do with my teams is in my one-to-ones, I'll ask them to rate their well-being out of 10. So 10 being brilliant, 1 being terrible. And that gives me just a nice sort of at a glance bit of I can track that each month or however often you have your one-to-ones. I can track that to see if things are going up or if they're going down or if they're kind of just staying the same. So that's really important information for me to get to know my people. But also what's really critical is to ask them, okay, so if you're an 8 now, that's brilliant. But what what if you turn around to me and say, actually, I'm a 4 or a 5? What do we do at that point? And it's better to have these conversations while their well-being is good. But what's our crisis plan, if you like, or what do you want us to do? Sorry, I've just seen the chat. I love the Spice Girls reference. Thanks. I had to get a bit of Spice Girls in. Um, but yeah, it's really important that you have that planning with that individual so that you're on the front foot in case, should anything change with their well-being. You've got a plan and you know how you're going to handle it, how you're going to support them, what they can do to support themselves as well is really important. And your one thing, what I mean by that is asking, if somebody is struggling, ask them what is the one thing that they might be able to do that day or that week or that month to help improve how they're feeling. It doesn't have to be these huge, massive, I'm going to do this, this, and this, all the self-care and all the, everything. Just what's the one thing? Just try and break it down, and feel like you're back in control. I think that's a big part of our mental health and well-being. Um, so the next one is the Spice Girls reference. It's about clarity. So knowing exactly what you want as a manager and also as an employee, knowing exactly what you want from that role. If you're a manager, knowing exactly what you want from your teams, what the boundaries are for each individual in the team, for their role and responsibilities. And again, the escalation point. So everybody's clear about, if this happens, what do I do? At what point do I escalate to you, my manager, or to another person in the organization, whatever that looks like. But just being really clear on expectations can just mean so much to us. And I've worked with people before where it's been very can't say the word, ambiguous, that's the word. And I found that quite challenging. And I know some people might thrive in those situations, but I think for a lot of us, that can be quite stressful. So getting as clear as we possibly can on what we want, and what the boundaries are for that role and how to escalate is really, really important. And if you're not a manager and if it's just for yourself, again, know what do you want to get out of this role? Is there stuff that you want to be getting involved with that you're not and you're getting a bit frustrated and that's having an impact on your mental health? Again, being clear with your line manager as to, actually, I want to do this. Like, how can I, can I get involved in this thing? How can I sort of shape my role a little bit more, to get more out of it if that's what you want. But clarity is a big, big part of a healthy culture. And then lastly, is all about recognition, and the importance of that. So I think we're all probably guilty of, and I certainly am, of just cracking on and getting on with the day job and all the things that we do. And often we don't stop and just go, wow, that worked really well. That was a really great result. Look at the impact we've had on that person or that situation. Because often we're just on to the next thing and the next thing. And so I'm a massive advocate for a pause. Put into your day or your week, a regular moment to pause and reflect. I think the more we can reflect, on our situations, on our work, on our personal lives, the more we get to know ourselves, and the more we know ourselves, the better our well-being can be. So really taking the time as much as you can, carving out that small window of time to just sit and think and process what you've just been doing, can go a really long, long way. And as managers, again, with your teams, have that moment in team meetings or at different points in the week where you take time to acknowledge the wins, no matter how small they are. I think it's really important to do that celebration. And also, in terms of inclusion, diversity, and belonging, as I said before, having open spaces where everybody can be included. And if you're a more senior member of the team or a senior manager, really leading by example in terms of opening up and including people from minority backgrounds or people that have neurodiverse, that getting their perspectives is really important. And also more junior members of the team, making sure that we are recognizing them and trying to get those, opening up conversations where they can be included is really, really important. Um, so hopefully they were helpful and there's things that you can take away and kind of implement. So I think it's like I said before, it's very easy to get overwhelmed with all of this stuff and like, where do I even start with culture? There's so much going on in the day to day. It's a really huge task. So breaking it down and taking those small actions can really help, and they're just the building blocks to making and seeing more impact in terms of culture. Um, so to summarize, I would say, we're trying to build that connection and create moments for connection as much as we possibly can. We need to invest in the infrastructure within our organizations. And also, we just need to lean on each other. We need to feel in our teams and in our organizations as a whole that we're all in it together. We're not alone. That having that psychological safety where you know that if you go into work and you're struggling, you're having a bad day, that there's people there that you can chat to. That makes such a difference to our well-being. And hopefully that's my hope for What's the Charity, is that this community is that place as well where you can lean on each other and people do understand what it's like. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I feel like I've just talked at you all, sorry. But I've just dropped a little QR code there on the screen if you want to check out the What's the Charity podcast. And we're also on Instagram as well, so you can follow us there at What's the Charity. And also, if anybody wants to connect on LinkedIn, I'd love that too. Louise Dawtry.
I put our links to LinkedIn and also to your Substack, Louise, in the chat
Oh,
at the start of the meeting, but let me
brilliant.
do it again because I think we've had quite a lot of comments in there as well, just so people can find them. So I've just
Oh,
put
that's
these
great.
in. So feel free to put any questions in the chat. We did have some questions submitted when people were registering. So perhaps I can start with a couple of those and then we can take any questions as well in the chat.
Yeah.
So I'll just read this one out. It's a little bit long, but I think it's important context. So working predominantly online across the UK has huge drawbacks in relation to communication, teamwork, meeting priorities and deadlines, clarity of work, and creating and feeling like a coherent team. What ways can we address this? So this is the sort of, I guess, working from home change to our work lives that's kind of
Yeah.
happened a lot since the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. My current role, I'm hybrid, so I do a couple of days in the office and the rest from home, which for me is the perfect balance. But obviously, I know for a lot of teams it is just remote, or you're, as you say, sort of working in completely different parts of the country or even the world, perhaps. So that does bring its own well-being challenges, absolutely. I think what we can do to help with that and to build belonging in those circumstances is really looking at what can we do to mimic that workplace experience. So having those regular meetings, obviously there's a lot of meetings and you don't want to just have a meeting for a meeting's sake. Absolutely not advocating that. But just those kind of social style meetings where you're just dropping in for a cup of tea and a chat and a talk about what you've watched on the telly and all those sort of things. That's something I've done in the past, and that's been really nice actually, because you get to know your colleagues on that different level rather than just work, work, work. Another thing that I think is absolutely brilliant, and I'm a huge advocate for, is a walk and a talk. So rather than having Zoom meetings and team meetings, because they can be quite draining, I can't do a lot of online things in a day because I find that quite heavy. So what I try to do and mix it up with is those walk and talks and get back on the phone. Let's bring the phones back. Let's have, have a chat with your manager, try and sometimes do our one-to-ones while we're walking and talking, and stick the headphones in and off we go, and just jot down notes in my phone as I'm walking. Um, Stuff like that. It's just kind of thinking about what your people want, and I think that's the key thing there, is asking them, as I said before, ask them what would they like to do to help foster that belonging. Because we don't have to figure it all out ourselves as managers. It's important to all work collaboratively to make things as good as they possibly can be for everyone at work.
Yeah, I think it's so like obviously it's difficult with like so sometimes with budgets or with logistics, but like even when you've met someone who you work with online face to face just one time, like
Mm.
I just find that like that sense of like trust and openness and that person that relationship just from meeting one time in person, I find just
Yeah,
like skyrockets after that. But
yeah,
if it's possible, to get people together, even just like now and then,
yeah,
it just makes such a huge difference to teams, I think.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you can do regular in-person meetings and things, definitely that. But if it's not possible, then we've got to try and just get that feeling
Yeah,
as best we can in other ways.
that's what you miss out on, right? It's the like kitchen conversations or the like you
Yeah,
pass someone in the corridor, they sort of like ad hoc conversations that we don't
yeah,
always get because sometimes we just join Zoom and we just like get straight into to
yeah.
work and things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big part of, it is a big part of well-being, and our enjoyment of work. I know when I go into the office, I don't get as much work done. I know that, but I schedule my meetings and things, my working week around that fact. So I know that when
Mm,
I'm in the office, that is my chance to go and have have face-to-face meetings. And, obviously we talk work, but I factor in a bit of time for
mm,
that relationship building as well, and getting to
yeah.
know people.
And then one other question we had submitted, I also can see we've got a question from Tanya in the chat. But in terms of because I know you also do a lot of volunteering, Louise, alongside your day job. But when a charity is run sort of primarily or entirely by volunteers, how do we balance our work responsibilities with our volunteer role without burning out? So sort of
Mm.
juggling all those different things that we might be involved in.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really important. I think not always, but often volunteers' well-being isn't always kind of considered as much as it should be. But our volunteers are a massive part of our workforce. And it's important to, again, have those regular check-ins with them, as you would with a paid member of staff, but to have regular one-to-ones with individuals who are volunteering for you to see how they're feeling. Is their experience with you as a volunteer what they expected it to be? And if not, why not? Making sure that they have access to the well-being initiatives or benefits that your paid people have as well. If you can do that, I think you should. But yeah, I think it's always going back to the communication and those open forums to discuss what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and what they want out. Again, what they want out of the role. Is there other things that they want to do that you weren't aware of, that they had capacity to do, or they had an interest in. But always making sure that if their workload and the hours that they're giving as volunteers, making sure that you understand what their capacity is, and you're not kind of going beyond that. If they have other commitments, um, just being clear on what they can offer in terms of their working patterns and hours.
Yeah. I think it's so important also what you said earlier with everyone, which is like having conversations about well-being while people are feeling well. Like what
Mm.
I think so often, like in my experience, it's like you don't think about these things in the day-to-day rush of things until maybe
Yeah.
someone starts to have a bit of a harder time. But then the problem is that that person is not necessarily in the right place to kind of offer strategies of how they can feel
Yeah.
better, because that's not, so it's like if you can ask someone when they're feeling great, then potentially you're going to get a lot more um, understanding of what kind of support works for them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just getting on the front foot and having and kind of being a bit strategic about our own well-being and being like, I need to be well. I think I've learned of the hard way over the years. I've experienced burnout myself a number of years ago, and you know, it took a lot of reflecting to come back from that, and I needed to understand myself better and what works for me, what doesn't work for me in terms of my time management, my management, the my manager's style and communication with me and with them and how I can get access to them and when, all of that stuff, what that looks like. But I think when you're in the thick of it, it's difficult to to carve out time to do that reflection. But it is absolutely the thing that has changed changed the game for me in terms of my well-being and mental health. And now I've got very set boundaries that I know what works for me and what doesn't, and I communicate that with my manager.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I'm planning on offering some free resources on all of this stuff to kind of help with that reflection and self-awareness and things like that. So that's coming up with What's the Charity. So yeah, if you're on the Instagram or the mailing list, you'll see more information about that soon. But yeah, it's something I'm really, really passionate about because I've seen the benefit of doing it myself. So I just want to share it with others.
And there was a question here from Tanya in the chat, which is, do you know how the figures in the first slide compare to the private sector? So I think this was around sort of figures to do with job satisfaction, and then burnout.
Yeah.
Um,
I know that I think it was the first statistic, the 73%, I think it is, job satisfaction. That's our sector was third out of,
mhm,
all of the UK, all of the different sectors and industries.
mhm,
So very, very high, in terms of job satisfaction. I know burnout is again, I don't know the kind of the rank. Well, actually, no, I do. I think we're second. I think it's kind of healthcare and social
mhm,
work, and then charity sector. They're the sort of two top sectors that experience burnout
mhm.
the most. Um, so yeah, similar, obviously similar kind of, that frontline healthcare work
Yeah,
comes
and like
in.
purpose-driven work, which gives us
Yeah.
the job satisfaction, but can
Yes.
also really impact
Yeah.
our own well-being and our own like boundaries and mental health as well.
Mm. Yeah.
So, and there's also a comment from Haley just to say, I've seen volunteers taken for granted, and I think that there can be a high turnover with volunteers moving on because of that, which is a shame.
Mm.
And I guess that a lot of it can also come down to the point you had earlier, Louise, about the importance of recognition,
Mm.
and like celebrating the small wins and making sure that our volunteers, as you say, are like a part of the team really and not a separate sort of cohort from
Yeah.
our staff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's a real shame, to see that happen. Because volunteers, as I say, they're such a core part of a lot of our organizations in the sector. So, without them, I don't know what we'd do. So it's really, to me, they are so critical to our work. It's really important to recognize them and, yeah, put on events for them, celebrate them, show them that appreciation, and do it often.
Awesome. And then another follow-up comment from Joanne just saying advocating for treating volunteers the same as you would employees. Or if you never see them, they may need even more touch points if they're
Mm.
sort of volunteering, I guess, away from your head
Yeah.
office or your regional office. They might just be sort of
Mm.
out there in the community.
Yeah.
And so, picking up the phone, making sure you're touching base with them and giving them those
Yeah.
opportunities to feel part of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just like a little, yeah, those touch points, whatever they look like. They're going to be some are going to be just small interactions, but others you could be doing more, like surveys, regular surveys with them to make sure you understand what their role actually is, because sometimes when you're removed from it, you think it's this, but actually the day-to-day of it can look quite different.
Mm.
So it's important that we're clear on any challenges that they're facing while they're doing work for us. Um, but yeah, again, having those supervision meetings with them to get to know them. I think getting to know people and what makes them tick and what works for them, what doesn't work for them, opening up that channel for communications is key.
So I think we've gone through sort of the comments and questions in the chat. If anyone has any sort of final thoughts, you can obviously please share them. I will send out the recording of this webinar. You can see on screen here, there's a QR code for what's the charity, and I'll also put all those details in the email as well, so you have them. Louise, was there any final thoughts or anything you wanted to say to everyone before we go and have some lunch?
Yeah. Yeah, don't want to get in the way of your lunch and your break. But yeah, just thank you very much for being here and for listening. And it's really encouraging to see so many of you that are really interested in this topic. And as I said, I could talk about it for days, but yeah, it's something I'm really, really passionate about. And I would say just remember those small wins and the small steps that you can take to get that feeling of control back, because I think sometimes it's just you feel like totally helpless when we're burnt out. So yeah, small steps is the way forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Louise. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I'll send out the recording later and hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Robin.
everyone. Bye.